Good morning. So just a couple of housekeeping things before I get started. I've had a couple of questions. We did have some handouts today and we ran out because we had such a wonderful turnout. We will make those handouts available online. Also, this meeting is being recorded, so we will make that recording available on the website, and we'll go ahead and put the PowerPoints up on the website. So any of the information at today's meeting you should be able to access online in the next week or so. Okay, so the fun part, yeah. I don't get to give away money, I just have to have you tell me stuff, so not fun actually, but okay. So because of the new scholarship, there are changes to reporting. Because the Workforce Challenge does fall under the Arkansas Challenge Lottery Act, that means requirements for reporting have to meet the requirements laid out under the Lottery Act. Well, where that becomes an issue for us is at the non-credit workforce level, all we have ever received in the past is course level reporting. So what your institutions would send us is we offered this non-credit course with this zip code. It had 30 students enrolled and it was worth 2 CEUs. And we used that to calculate numbers. But we didn't have any idea of what students were on that roster. We had no student level reporting at all. So beginning in academic year 2019, we are having to move to a student level reporting requirement for non-credit workforce to make it eligible or make it compliant with the Lottery Act. So currently, there is a non-credit course file that is being reported. There are no changes to the format of that file. So everything that you've previously been submitting to us in the course file, you will continue to submit to us exactly the same way. And it will remain an end-of-term report. So for those of you familiar with our credit reporting, our student files, registration files, course files, all of those happen at the beginning of the term, and then we have an end of term. We're not doing that with non-credit. Non-credit will remain reporting at the end. So like your summer 2, which is when this will go into effect, those are not due until after summer 2 is done, and that's going to stay the same way. We are adding a new file, though. We are now going to have the non-credit workforce education student file, and it is a new format. So one of the handouts that you received, if you're one of the lucky people to get one before they ran out, is a copy of the course file format, and then on the back, the student file format, so you can look at those formats. For the IR people in the room, the new abbreviation for this file is going to be WRKS. So that's what you'll use to submit it to the system. And we're going to have one record per student per course. So if you have a student take 2 or 3 non-credit courses within the same term, you'll have to list that student for each one of those. It's essentially combining the student file and the registration file into the same thing. And we want the number of students reported in the student workforce to add up to the number of students listed as enrolled in the course file. So if you say in the course file there's 30 students, we need 30 students for that course in the student file. Okay, so the question is this for only students receiving the scholarship or for all students? And the answer is yes to both. So we're going to have part of the file will only be required for those getting the scholarship, but we are going to have a college ID and a student name for every student. So, and we'll get into that in just a second. So if you are reporting non-credit workforce at all, we have to have the student file. It's going to be required. If you are a 4-year institution who has not previously submitted workforce files to us, if you are choosing to participate in this program, you're going to have to begin submitting both files to us. So this is a requirement of participating in the Arkansas Workforce Challenge with the non-credit side. So like I just mentioned, parts of the student file you will have to do for all students. So we're going to have the student ID, the student name, the unique sequence ID, so that tells us which course in the course file to link that student to, and then Workforce Challenge recipient, yes or no. So if you mark no, that this is not a Workforce Challenge recipient, then the rest of the data elements become optional. They will not be required. If you mark yes, then we're going to have to receive the rest of the data elements that we're going to go into. So we know that when you're dealing with industry, a lot of times they just send you a roster and they're not going to release SSN and all of this other information. We respect that. We understand that that's a limitation, and that's why we're not requiring all of those elements on all students. Now, if you choose to report those elements on students who are not workforce challenged, that is not going to give you an error, and it may allow us to do some additional analysis on those students if you would like us to in the future, but it will not be required. So that's what I just said on all of that. Okay, so if the student is a Arkansas Workforce Challenge Scholarship recipient in a non-credit course, these are the additional fields that will be required for those students. And so you're talking SSN, date of birth, gender, race, ethnicity, and then the number of CEUs attempted and number of CEUs completed. And this is going back to what Jonathan was talking about verifying that students are completing the non-credit courses for which they are receiving the scholarships. So if they attempt 4 CEUs, they complete 0, we'll need that reflected in the file. Okay, so the question is currently for non-credit workforce, in the course file, you only put the number of students who completed the course. Now that this will be used as part of the reporting for the Workforce Challenge, do you need to include students who did not complete the course? So if the student is a Arkansas Challenge Workforce student, they need to be included in the enrollment count regardless of if they completed or not. Yes, you will include them if they began but did not finish, only if they are a Arkansas Challenge recipient. Yes, so the question is, if a course does not end neatly within a term, do you report it within the term in which it ends? The answer to that is yes. You would follow the same reporting method as what you're doing currently with your course files for non-credit workforce. So if you're reporting those, let's just say it starts in December and goes to January. If you're probably reporting those right now on your spring workforce file, and you're going to continue to report them that way because we are going to have that number of CEUs completed field, and you won't have that until it's actually completed. Sure. So I guess, so the question is there a distinction between successful completion and non-successful completion? So the answer to that is, would you actually award that student the CEUs? So if they're not being awarded the CEUs, I would say then they're not considered fully completed for the purpose of the scholarship. Jonathan, do you have a... We'll have to look at that question. I'm going to make a note. But many of your non-credit are for what? Sure. Mm-hmm. Yes, okay, so the question is, if you are doing a customized non-credit program for a specific industry, how does it fit into this reporting? So you're going to report it in the same way that you've reported it in the past in the course file, which is just numbers only. For the student file, all we have to have is a student name and then a student ID that's assigned by your institution. And your student ID doesn't have to match up to what your credit student ID system is. I mean, it may be that your student ID is the order they fall in your spreadsheet, but if I have to contact your IR person with a question about your file, and I say, I have a question about student with student ID 1234, can you match it up to that student and know who student 1234 is? So we don't care how you assign a student ID, although generally it's not the same thing as the SSN. But that is up to you as an institution to decide how that student ID is assigned. So in that scenario where it's a customized training, all you really need is your roster in order to give us a student name and then add the student ID to that. Yes. Okay, for the question is, do we need to use the institution's assigned prefix? So this is a institutional research thing. And since this is not an SSN ID, it's a college ID. The college ID is SPICE code specific. So it's not, we're not ever going to try to match up your college ID to another institution's college ID, and we're not using it as a primary key for it. So as long as you don't have John Doe and Jane Smith both with the same college ID, it's not going to cause an issue. So as long as there's not crossover within your institution, we don't have to use the institutional prefix. Now, if you're reporting the SSN to us, then it's going to have to meet the same SSN formats as for all other reporting in the SIS manual. Additional questions about this? Correct. Yes. So the question is, making sure that regardless of how the ID is signed, it doesn't need to have the same ID, and that is correct. So if you're using something like the line number on the spreadsheet, you might want to have a prefix to that for, like 2019 term 1 line number on the spreadsheet, or something like that to identify the distinction. Every institution can come up with their own method for the college ID, like I said, as long as there's not duplication between two separate students. And you can identify that student if we send you a college ID number. So the question is, in the course file, the field specifically says the number of workforce students completed, and if we include non-credit workforce students that did not complete in that count, how it won't be accurate. And probably what we're going to do as an answer to that is change the name of that field to be just enrollment. And if you actually look at our database, we have it listed as enrollment. We don't specifically say completed in our database behind the scenes. So we're probably going to make an adjustment within the field definitions in the manual for you to just say enrollment to help with some of that clarification. So the question is, if you're a four-year institution who has not previously reported, how many years do you need to go back? We do not need to go back. We will just start right now and move forward with it. And I think that question may tie some into the questions around productivity funding and the possibility of using workforce and productivity funding. Right now, workforce and productivity funding has been tabled at the moment. We're not looking at doing any retroactive reporting into that at this moment. So if you are a four-year institution looking at reporting for the first time, just start AY 2019. Yes. So the attempted and complete, so the question is about the attempted and completed matching up with the course file that says successfully complete. So the attempted and completed only has to be filled in for the students who are non-credit or who are workforce challenge recipients. So you only have to fill that in there. And then for the course file, right now it says successfully complete. We're probably going to change that word to enrollment, because what you're going to do is include everyone who successfully completed plus any workforce challenge recipients who attempted but did not complete. So that's going to be an adjustment there. And we will work on making some clarifying statements in the manual for that. Yes, so if you are looking at students who enrolled but did not complete a non-credit course and they are not Arkansas Workforce Challenge, then you would still not include those. Sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the comment is around for the workforce courses that are offered to specifically to industry that are receiving funding to pay for that course from outside grants. Do we need to look at potentially having those distinguished in the file in some way in the future? Did I repeat that correctly? Or, so I guess my answer to that right now is this is a very new process to us, our first year having the student file, and I'm sure there's going to be some bugs that we work out as we go through it. There's going to be situations like that that we need to look at and address over the next year. We would appreciate your feedback on anything like that. And then next year when we're redoing the manual for AY 2020, we may look at adding a field that can somehow distinguish those if that's something that we need to do to make the process easier. Right. Correct. Yes. You have never, and this is the reporting of student level data for any non-credit workforce has never occurred. So we're having to build new tables here to hold this. Yes. Sure. So the comment is that there's always going to be a last second, hey, can you come to our work and offer this training? And when those last second things occur, the ability to get the program pre-approved will not happen within the timely manner. So in regards to being eligible for the workforce challenge, that would be correct, that those would not be on the list yet. As regards to actually reporting the students, we're still going to need those in the fall, even if they're last second. But if you're seeing trainings that are occurring, even if they're last second requests, but if there's things that you get requests for repeatedly, OSHA training or things like that, you may want to make a list of those programs that maybe they're not on your roster every term, but that you get repeated requests for, You may want to make a list of those programs and contact the academics division here to see if a pre-approval of those is possible, even though they're not on the schedule yet. Am I saying that wrong? Right.
And we'll work with any program as far as the discussion, and we did that same thing with this list here. I can tell you Mason had a lot of discussions with CEO offices and stuff like that around that list and asking questions about courses that were submitted, both non-credit and credit courses and programs.
And I do want to make sure that we're not confusing multiple issues. I mean, there are some changes to the workforce file, but as for the workforce challenge, those customized industry courses are probably not going to be listed as an eligible program. Those programs are predetermined based on DWS requirements, and they have to lead to those licensures. So typically, those are going to be a different set of programs than those customized industry training things that come up.
Did that answer your questions? Okay. Any additional questions on this slide? The students who are receiving Arkansas Workforce Challenge, regardless of if they are non-credit or if they are in credit-bearing programs, will have to be reported in the annual financial aid file. We do have a new fund code that is in the file for that, which is ARWFC. And previously, for our people in the room, the way the financial aid file was validated was we said, for this student with this SSN, did they occur in a student file at any point during that academic year? And if the answer was no, you got an error. We are going to be changing that validation to say, did that student for this fund code show up in a student file or in a non-credit workforce file within that academic year? Any questions about reporting that in the annual financial aid file? This is a change for this file because previously the annual financial aid file only reported for credit programs. So if the student is in a non-credit program but receiving this scholarship, they will be in the annual financial aid file. Sure. Right. I will have to look at that. I don't believe so. I believe it's just going to be listed as a scholarship, and those students won't have to have the other if they're non-credit, because they probably haven't applied for FAFSA. They probably don't have an ESC, and cost of attendance is not going to be the same because it's not tuition fees, books, all of that. It's a whole separate program. So I'll have to look at it, but my answer right now is no. If they're a non-credit student, all they're going to have reported is that scholarship line. Any additional questions about the financial aid file? No. So the question is, in the annual financial aid file, will there be a new field to indicate that this student is non-credit? And the answer to that is no, there will not be. And it's possible that a student could come, let's say they come in fall term, they take a non-credit program, they get a scholarship, and so they're going to be reported there, but maybe they come back in spring and they actually register into a credit program. In that case, the student would have multiple listings, both for credit and for non-credit. Any additional questions? Yes. Yes, so the question was, are students being reported in the annual financial aid file only those who are actually receiving the scholarship? And that is correct. So if they are a non-credit workforce student, The only way they would be put in the annual financial aid file is if they are getting the Workforce Challenge Scholarship. Any additional questions? Okay, so are there any additional questions about reporting, financial aid, academics, anything for Dr. Walker, Jonathan, or myself? Yes, so the new reporting requirements go into effect July 1st. The summer one files that are due actually in July, this does not apply to, or due in, no, they do, August? No, the summer one files that are due in September do not have student file requirements. Those are course file only, just like they've always been. The summer two files are actually due in October, I believe. Yes, those are due in October, and those will require the student non-credit file as well. There's not scholarships available for summer two, but we have to have the validation in place July 1, so that's going to start with just AY19 in general. So for summer two, the student file, all that's going to have to be is your college ID, your student name, your sequence number, and Arkansas Workforce Challenge answered no for all of those students. Yes, so the question is, if a course started prior to summer two, but it's ending in summer two, therefore it will be reported in the summer two workforce file, will you need to go back and gather the information for the student file for workforce? And the answer to that is yes. So any students being reported with summer two, we will need to have that student name, college ID element. Mm-hmm. Yes, so the question is, if a student is non-credit and then they appear in the annual financial aid file, will we be matching up the non-credit workforce file to the annual financial aid file via social? And that is correct. So in our system, the SSN is the primary key when it is available. It is the primary key for the annual financial aid file, which is why it's being required for those students who are receiving that scholarship. So that is how we will match those students up between the annual financial aid file and the non-credit workforce file is SSN. So the error report, the question is, if you get an error report on the student, it will be the college ID in the financial aid file if the error is on the financial aid file. Because for those of you who are not IR, our error report starting July 1 will no longer include SSNs for security reasons. They will only list college IDs. So for the financial aid file, if that is a file being submitted, the error report would include the college IDs listed in the financial aid file. So if your student, whatever college ID that you include for the workforce file does need to match up with a college ID in your annual file, if possible, to make it easier on your end. Yes, so that was, the question was, the sequence number is listed under the optional items in workforce, but it is a required item. And I made that note here at the bottom in red of this slide. I didn't discuss it. I apologize for that. So the manual did not specify this was a required field. However, it does have to be populated for all students, not just Workforce Challenge, because that's what allows us to link the students back to the course. is that sequence number. And yes, the field will not move, and I will make sure that we have that clarified within the manual. Additional questions? Reporting, financial aid, academics, anything? Okay. For those of you who are here and for those of you who are watching this remotely, if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to myself, Jonathan, or Dr. Walker. We'll be happy to answer any of those questions that you may have. We will also hang out here for a few minutes after everyone disperses. So if you have any questions that you want to talk about one-on-one, we'll be available. Dr. Markham, do you have any final statements? Okay. You guys asked a lot less questions than we planned on, so we're running early. Thank you so much for coming.